On the other note, back to our sermon series. We are looking at the final prayer accessory today. So these are the different accessories that I, in my own head, I kind of pictured as those things we can dress up Mr. Potato Head. If Mr. Potato Head at his most basic is your basic prayer that you would say, like a kid has just the rote, "Dear Jesus, thank you for the day," and he has his basic prayer. We all probably have some form of a basic prayer that we go to. Um, I offered you the Examine as one that I really love because it carries me first to God's nearness. Next, it interrupts any of my attempts to solve problems, to do anything else. It interrupts that. And first I look and savor at my blessings in life. And I love that. I love that it takes me through my day. I get to reflect on the day past with its traumas, but also with all the good stuff that it held. And so I feel like those initial 3 steps in the Examine are just amazing steps that help me out. It's a great foundation, but upon that foundation, we can dress up our prayer, so to speak, with different things as we need them. We've looked at intercession, we've looked at confession, we've looked at these different things, and today we're gonna look at petition. Today is about prayers of petition. Intercession is the term for what we looked at previously, where we're interceding on behalf of another person. And when we connect with them at this emotional level, we then feel for them, and we do petition for them on their behalf. But the church, because that follows in intercession, because it deals with someone else, the church kind of rolls that all up into this general term of intercession. When you intercede for someone, the church generally believes you're praying for something on their behalf. What I think the church misses, though, is the first part of that we looked at, which is I first go into it with no agenda, and I bring Jesus and them together. But then it leads to petition for them because I have brought the heart of Jesus into it without my agenda, and now I kind of get the heart of Jesus for what he wants me to pray for them, and then I begin to pray for them. And the petition for others, though, is kind of in that term of intercession. When we talk about prayers of petition in general, the church typically believes that these are our own prayers, praying for our own needs, our own petitions, our own requests to God. And these petitions is something that Jesus taught us to do when his disciples first said, "How do we pray?" He gave them a list of petitions. Eugene Peterson says, "Praise and thanksgiving are always appropriate, certainly. And it's certain that our final prayers will all be praise. Heaven will reverberate with our amens and hallelujahs in the end." So practicing praise now, it's always a good idea. It's going to be where we end up. But for here and now, Eugene Peterson says, we mostly ask. And Jesus taught us to ask. There's something vulnerable about asking. Saying, I need something. I don't have everything. I can't do all of this. I went through a difficult time with my own Christian faith a few years into my Christian journey after I heard the voice of God when I was 31. And a few years into this journey, I went through what's popularly described as a kind of deconstruction. That's the popular term. Fortunately, I had experiences that would not let me leave my faith in shambles and walk away from it, though. Instead, I had to wrestle with my faith and rebuild and remodel the areas of my faith that had to undergo demolition. Technically, we're all deconstructing parts of our faith as we evolve. You have to deconstruct some old notion when you learn about how things are better, how things are really how they're supposed to be. But I wrestled with this a few years into my journey, and I hit a time of a cynicism of sorts. I married an amazing woman, Liz, And she has held, to this day, a purity of faith that has challenged me. It even confused me when I was in my time of deconstruction and cynicism. One of her regular practices was, and then actually still is, to pray for and thank God for parking spaces. After everything I had experienced in my life, seeing people dying, watching people kill each other, watching people suffer and starve, viewing people's poverty to the point where they desired even my cast aside empty water bottle when I was in Afghanistan. I experienced the observation of people enduring to live on despite exposure to insane elements of weather, unlike we ever experience here in our typically mild Pacific Northwest. When I left Afghanistan, it was 125 degrees. These people endured these things. They died. They killed each other. And I looked at my wife pray for parking spaces. Here I am, middle class. And yet I'm living a life of opulence, unlike many around the world can even ever comprehend. As she's praying for a parking space, I'm here sitting in a dependable vehicle with air conditioning and good tires. And we're really going to pray for God to affect the course of things on our behalf, where we already exist in a first world nation, to give us a parking space. At some point, typically a parking spot would appear, and Liz would thank God and she'd be grateful. And I was left frustrated, confused, and even bitter that we would dare to pray for a parking spot in the face of such great global need. It wasn't until a study of the Lord's Prayer that I did several years ago that I came to a perspective-changing revelation. Matthew shares the Lord's Prayer in his gospel. And he says, "When you pray, do not babble repetitively like the Gentiles, because they think that by many words they'll be heard. Don't be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you even ask him. So pray this way: Our Father in heaven, may your name be honored. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we ourselves have forgiven our debtors. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." Jesus has given us life-changing petitions in here. Global shaking petitions. Powerful recognition of an amazing God. A desire for his kingdom and will to impact the entire world. The spread of forgiveness through the entire world. And a deliverance from evil. These are super important prayers. These are the prayers that have global impact that I'm talking about are more important than a parking spot. But dead center in the middle of these prayers is a simple, practical, immediate petition for our daily bread. It's on this petition for God to give us our daily bread that I do want to focus on today. This is the petition on our behalf. There's something about this petition that I believe has actually caused it to be placed dead center in the middle of the Lord's Prayer. Luke often boils down, he boils things down to a degree because Luke is taking Jewish stuff and he's writing to a non-Jewish audience. So sometimes it's like, I don't know everything, man. Hell, dumb it down for me. So he takes some of the things and he dumbs it down a little bit. And he does the same for the Lord's Prayer. He boils it down. And this petition for our daily bread is even more clearly set as the hinge petition of the prayer. I think to explore the reason for this, we have to go back to the Exodus and the story of manna, which many agree that Jesus is referring to with this whole idea of daily bread. And I've come to think the same thing. The story of manna is first found in Exodus chapter 16, verses 1 through 5. And it says, when they journeyed from Elim, the entire company of Israelites came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their exodus from the land of Egypt. The entire company of Israelites murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread to the full. Or have you brought us out into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly from hunger? Then the Lord said to Moses, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people will go out and gather the amount for each day. This is the daily bread. They will go out and gather the amount for each day, so that I may test them. Will they walk in my law or not? On the sixth day, they will prepare what they bring in, and it will be twice as much as they gather every other day. This was to make up for the Sabbath, so they wouldn't have to work on the Sabbath. What we find here in Exodus 16 is that only a short time into their journey, we seemingly find the Israelites starving to death. And they need food. You've brought us out here to starve, Moses. We're dying. But hold on, there's an issue here. Exodus 12 tells us that Israel left Egypt with, and I quote, flocks, herds, and a very large amount of cattle. Also, they left with plenty of baking supplies. That's in Exodus 12. Exodus 16, they fear starvation. Exodus 17, we're going to find out that Israel still has their animals. They still have sources of food. So how could they be out of food and starving when they needed manna? They weren't. They weren't starving when they needed manna. Something else is going on. Here's what I've come to believe that it is. Israel is a group of people at this point who are fearful of a big, powerful God who can shake kingdoms to get them free. But can this big, powerful God really be trusted to care for little humans? Isn't this a struggle? One of the greatest struggles of humanity in general? Not to believe in some big supernatural entity out there, but to believe in an intimate, personally connected God who knows me uniquely and will care for me and my unique needs in my little place in this world, in the universe, in the cosmos. It's one thing to think of that big, powerful being out there. It's another thing to trust that his attention is pinpointed down on me. The manna for Israel is a pinnacle moment between them and God. But at least right away, it's not a miracle of need. Manna is a preemptive gift that builds relationship in advance of when there might be a need that these people are fearful of. What happens when there is a need? We're in fear of the what if. The manna is almost like God saying, you wonder if I'll care to deliver your most basic needs to you when you find you're truly in need. Will I deliver that when you're in need? Let me show you now that before you're even truly in need, I already have the basics ready. The idea that the manna bread has established is not the meeting of a need, but it's the proof that God cares about what concerns us. You aren't even starving yet, but you're concerned about starving. Let me set your mind at ease and build my relationship with you. What manna shows is that God cares about what we care about. Whether that's a war between Ukraine and Russia and all the nuclear drama and whatever else there is on a big global level, or finding a parking space. Daily bread then has started off not just with what sustains us when we need it, but addressing the stuff that we're concerned about. It's a bigger God who can care about both. Our prayers for the war in Ukraine and a parking space. It's a bigger God who can simultaneously care to work at making it on earth as it is in heaven, in the huge picture of things, and who can care to hear of my personal concern that I might not have bread when I need it. And he can care for the small, unique picture of one person named Jason and what might concern me in my day as I will go through my life. What I found is that the God of my wife's parking space prayers was a bigger, more active, more interested in us God and present than I had ever conceived of at that time. Where that brings us with such a big God is a freedom with our petitions of prayer, our requests to send to him. It is a freedom to believe that God cares about whatever I care about. So petition him with it all. An end to global injustice. And that you might get a ticket to your favorite concert before it sells out. I believe that a few things will happen as you petition God for even your most basic need. First, there will begin to be a sense of freedom from the rat race of the world. And the words give us, as we hold our hands out, give us our daily bread. We're giving up getting our daily bread for ourselves. I'm releasing control over attempting to manipulate the fulfillment of my need. And I'm submitting my request to God. And as I do this, I'm exchanging the hard work of control with the rest and peace of trust. I leave it up to God. Second, we build relationship with God. He gets to explicitly hear from us about even our seemingly most petty needs. And he gets to engage with them. We see this from day one. God already knows. We just sang about it. We just read about it. God knows what we need before we ask. Searching for Adam. Where are you, Adam? You don't think God already knew? Jesus comes up to people and says, do you want to be healed? Well, no. Of course they want to be healed. Yes. Of course they want to be healed. But these are invitations to engagement. These are invitations to relationship. Adam, where are you? I'm over here. Yeah, I already knew that, but now I have you engaging in dialogue. Do you want to be healed? Yes, I do. We've just started a conversation. There's relationship. So when we even bring our most petty needs to God, we build relationship with Him. I think third and finally, we're empowered. We're empowered because we get to look to change things. We get to look to affect what might happen. If God cares to address some of our concerns, and He wants to address those in the middle of a dialogue, then if I don't dialogue, are they going to be addressed? It's a question for another time, but what it is now is that we become empowered because as we dialogue with God, we engage with Him in what He might do. We become partners with God. So what we find in the hinge moment of the Lord's Prayer is a God who's big enough to meet whatever need we have for the day, a parking space, whatever concerns us for that day, and still work on bringing heaven to earth, still work on spreading forgiveness through the world. We have a God who's big enough to do it all, who is present and aware of it all.